Okay, Erev Tov, good evening, everyone. If you are watching this recording, it's because we've decided to make it public, but the truth is, right as of now, the intention is to keep this a private video, so you won't be watching this, ever. Maybe someone will be able to hack and know that they're not supposed to be watching this. But we're going to continue the topic that we left off last week. Last week, we closed off on the topic of Shemirat Einayim, guarding our eyes, because the Gemara and Berachot of Kaftal and Amud Aleph was speaking about what was considered ervah, or quote unquote nakedness. There are certain body parts that someone should not be looking at. The first thing that we had explained is that anything, any part of the body, is usher to look at on a person that is forbidden to you, and it's done with the intent to have some sort of a benefit. Now, you're saying the intention, the benefit is like not tangible. You're not actually touching or feeling. You're just looking. But still, as we saw in the Rambam in Hilchot Teshuvah, he said that that's an avon gadol. It's a tremendous sin that people will never do teshuvah for. And the reason people will never do teshuvah for is because they don't believe that it's a sin. And they'll justify and they'll say, "What? I never touched the person. I never had relations with the person." And so we discussed a little bit. You had a very good question about what if it's someone's job, someone's profession, different. Someone goes in the professional world, has to be involved with people. And again, we said that it all comes down to ultimately, now if someone is not modest, it's one thing. But if they are, what ends up happening is that it all comes to what someone's intention is. If someone has intention of enjoying how someone looks and looking at them from with that respect, then I feel that it's baktana. As the Gemara says, looking even at the small, the way the Rambam says, even the small finger, any part of a woman that is forbidden to you, you should not be looking at for enjoyment. Okay, so we discussed that last week. If you recall, we had this list of things that are erva. The first on the list that Rabbi Yitzchak told us was tefach beisha erva. We have a minimum measurement that is considered erva, and that was a tefach. And the Gemara asked, tefach is 8 centimeters. What does that mean? You can't like look at someone that's prohibited to you for a tefach's worth of being uncovered. What does that mean? You can't even look at their small finger. It says, yeah, correct. It has nothing to do with looking at someone who's forbidden to you. If someone is forbidden to you, you absolutely cannot look at them even a small amount. If someone is permitted to you, for example, someone's wife, and the person is not dressed fully, or there are certain areas of the body that's normally covered, but isn't, then we may not recite Kiryat Shema in front of that person. So now we have like two separate laws of one is areas that should be covered and should not be covered, that don't need to be covered. That's one. Two is specifically having to do with Shema Yisrael. If someone is not dressed properly in front of you, can you recite Shema Yisrael? But that doesn't explain what is like criteria of how to dress properly. Okay, question?
Sorry, I was thinking about this week. We're talking about how a woman should dress who is not forbidden to you, correct? Your wife?
Not how a woman should dress, but
What you're allowed to see.
what one is when a person is allowed to recite Shema. That's what the halacha is about.
What about wife is in nidah? So she's forbidden to you in that moment. So does that mean she can't have any bit uncovered? Is that what you're supposed to say?
At least with respect to reciting Shema. With respect to reciting Shema, that's correct. If a person should be, even someone's wife is uncovered, is undressed, a person should not be reciting Devarim Shebigdusha in front of her. Should be dressed. That's correct.
The difference in the amount of covering when the nidah and not.
Potentially, yes. If it's a way that is going to arouse interest, then a man should not be looking even at his own wife. Even at his own wife during the time of nidah, because in that moment she's forbidden to him. At that moment, the person should not be looking at his wife in a way that would arouse him and cause him, tempt him to be together at that time. For sure not. But yeah, there are halachot about that. But even if it's not nidah, even if she's not nidah, and even if they are allowed to be with each other, reciting tefillot, they have to be modest. They have to be dressed properly. And so if his wife is not, and he would not be able to recite Shema, even if it's not nidah, even if she's not nidah. That's what the way the Gemara is explaining it. Okay, that led us into the second statement. Shok be'isha erva. How do you translate shok? Either thigh or leg. Yeah, it's either the thigh of a woman is shok be'isha erva, a thigh is considered erva, or perhaps the whole leg is machloket. Different opinions about how much of the leg has to be covered. We spoke about it. According to the one that says shok is a thigh, that means it has to be covered up until the knee. According to the one, it means the entire leg, then it has to be covered all the way up until the ankle. So we're going to continue now with that list. And again, keeping this in mind of Shemirat Einayim, but we're going to see how it's not just eyes. There's some other sense. And what is that? Let's see. Well, first let me pick up from Rav Chasta. We're picking up from Gemara Berachot of Kafdal Amud Aleph. If you're looking at the art scroll, that is on 24A on the right. Amar Rav Chasta says, Shok be'isha erva, a lady's thigh is considered, or leg is considered erva. Shneimar galish shok ivri naharot, as the pasuk will say that one will have, when someone is going to cross through a river, they're going to lift up their clothing because they don't want it to get wet. So they're going to lift up their clothing. They're going to reveal their shok to cross through the river. Uchtiv tigal ervatech v'gam tereich ervatech. And then in the next line it says, and you're revealing your nakedness. So you see clearly that a shok is nakedness. It's saying, reveal your shok and reveal the nakedness. So that's the textual basis there. Although this isn't necessarily a textual law, but this is the textual basis for it. Okay. Next, Amar Shmuel, Kol Ba'isha Erva. A woman's singing voice is also considered erva. This is the concept called Kol Isha. Kol Isha is a woman's voice can be arousing, not in having a conversation, but specifically with singing. You see someone singing, it's like, wow, it's powerful. It could have a impact. It could get someone interested. And therefore, a man should not be listening to a woman whom he is forbidden to singing. It's someone else's wife. I'm sitting here watching her sing and I'm enjoying it. It's not appropriate. This is someone else's wife. It's not my wife. Your own wife, you could sing and what do you call it? Caress, not caress. What is it called? Karaoke. Yeah, that's not the word that I meant. But what do you say when you like serenade? That's the word that I wanted. I don't know why I said caress. Yeah, I wanted that you could serenade each other by singing to each other all you want because it's permitted. But if someone that is forbidden, it's not appropriate. I'm listening to someone that's forbidden to me singing in a way that's very arousing, and I'm sitting there and I'm enjoying it. Kol beisha erva. The woman's voice is considered erva, shneimar, as a pasuk, quoting a pasuk from Shir Hashirim, ki kolech arev umarech naveh. Your voice is sweet and your appearance is beautiful, equating looking and listening. Both can be arousing, both through sight and also through sound. Yes.
So, like celebrities too, like Eurovision was last week. A woman had a beautiful voice. Was that would be appropriate?
Isn't there a high, if you don't know the lady, you can listen?
You don't know the lady, meaning you haven't met her, or don't know what she looks like.
If it's your wife.
What if it's your wife? So your wife singing is permanent. That's what I'm saying. Like you're not allowed to serenade each other. It's very romantic.
I've never seen her actually.
But okay, so you have a few points here. You're asking, what about if you want to watch American Idol or whatever show it is? You're watching a woman do an act that is arousing, and it's a woman that is forbidden to you. So the answer is it shouldn't be done.
What if it's recorded? You can't even see the person.
Okay.
Is that where it's great?
So here's I'll answer your question with a question. What if someone is watching, like not live, but recorded? Is that a problem? The answer is, if it's arousing and it's improper, then it doesn't matter whether it's live in person or recorded. Similar concept. Now, some might say that when it comes to singing, it's a little bit different. And there are situations where maybe it's not as bad, especially if something is not in the, in the arousing way. Like there could be someone is singing, I don't know, an Elvis Presley song that's very beautiful, that's very arousing, and all of a sudden gets someone in like a loving mood. Or it could be someone singing the Star Spangled Banner, and that perhaps it's not as arousing, it's more formal. So maybe you could say that there's some differences in that situation. Another thing where there's some differences is when they're singing as a group. For example, if you have a group of girls singing, you don't pinpoint any individual voice and say, "Wow, she's so beautiful." It's just you hear a choir. So there's some leniency there, especially if you have a choir with boys and girls, or you're singing at Shabbat table, everyone is singing together, so you can't really distinguish. So in these situations, it's not really arousing anything if everyone together is singing Shalom Aleichem, because it's not like one person being called out, so you have some leniency there. There have been times where I've been somewhere and someone belts out the Star Spangled Banner, and it's like, all right, what are you gonna do? Yeah, the national anthem, exactly. All right, okay. So I don't know if you have to make a scene about it, but if it's something that's of arousal, and usually, like with celebrities at these things, the way that they're dressed, the way that they're singing, yeah, like this is probably not appropriate. It's probably not an appropriate thing to be involved with, but I don't know. Good. Good. Questions? All right. Am I gonna get censored because I said the word? What? Oh yeah, we're not posting this. Can you like just go bleep? Can you do that? Like just put like something on my mouth and all right. Very good. No, I think it's important. And I gave like a harsh response just as to explain it. But look, obviously there's a clear difference, and there are times what Tomer said is correct. Let's say you don't know what she looks like. If you don't know what she looks like, then there's a leniency. Because yeah, I hear a voice, but I'm not really getting aroused because I don't know who it is. As far as I'm concerned, it could be a voice of an AI, right? And like, is Siri real? Like, it's just like if she says something, does it like it could be fake. But if you see the person and you know who the person is, even if it's not live, but it's something that could have some sort of a temptation coming from it, it's an erva. It's a form of erva. Okay, I don't think anyone argues that like listening to a beautiful voice is like powerful. It's something enjoyable, right? That's why you have these industries where people will be able to get 100,000 people in a stadium and make billions of dollars, right? So there is something there that's very clear, and it's not always appropriate. All right, let's keep going. Amar Rav Sheshat. Rav Sheshat said, it just keeps getting a little bit more and more good topics. Amar Rav Sheshat. Rav Sheshat said, Se'ar ba'isha erva. The hair of a lady is also considered nakedness. Shneimar sa'arech ke'eder ha'izim. Your hair is like a stream of goats. Now, the pasuk that's quoted is very interesting because it's like comparing a woman's hair to goats. It's not really something that you would say is so attractive. But the context of the pasuk, if you look, they even have the translation down there. Your hair is like a flock of goats trailing down from Har Gilad. It's like almost as though you're looking from back and you're seeing a mountain with this like trail of a flock of goats coming down, and it looks powerful, it looks impactful. If you ever see a stampede, it's like, wow. So similarly, you see a woman with very long, flowy hair coming down, and it's very beautiful, and it could be impactful. So this is where we have the concept of se'ar v'isha erva. Hair is a erva as well. Now, there is some halachot about this. The Aruch HaShulchan, who is often misquoted, talks about this. The Aruch HaShulchan says is that yes, you see from this Gemara that se'ar ba'isha erva, the hair, a lady's hair, is considered erva. This does not refer to single girls; it's only for married women, and that's what's appropriate. It's appropriate to cover. Now that said, what the Aruch HaShulchan said is, let's say you are somewhere where there's a lady who's not covering her hair. Can you recite Shema? So it's not a question of whether she needs to cover her hair or not. That's not the question we're dealing with. The question we're dealing with is, what if I am somewhere and the lady is not covering her hair? So the Aruch HaShulchan says, nowadays it's pretty common it's something that's common for a lady, a married woman, to have her hair uncovered, and therefore it's not as arousing. Perhaps it's not as arousing as it used to be. In Iran, you can imagine all of the women would cover their, they would all have something, a scarf. It's a matter of modesty. I remember my grandmother, not necessarily from a religious thing, but just from this is what they do. They would, like if you want to pretend to be a bibi on Purim, you want to dress up as a bibi, what are you going to do? You're going to take a scarf and put it around your head. You're not going to take your hair and go like this. It's like, this is like something that was very common. It was very common for them to cover their hair. But the Aruch HaShulchan says that even though it may not be correct halachically, since it's not as common, therefore someone would be allowed to recite Shema in front of a lady whose hair is uncovered because it's not as arousing. That's just the practicality. That said, if it's like this woman that's like, wow, it's like, oh, like big and beautiful and like, oh my gosh, everyone's eyes are there, it's attractive, then it's considered Ervah. It's considered Ervah. There is one more thing, just because we want to talk about it, because this is where it's discussed. These three words, Se'ar Be'isha Ervah, like full books written on this topic of hair covering, articles back and forth, a lot of halachot. So commonly, women who cover their hair, they have few ways of doing it. One of them is through some sort of a cloth or like a hat, something. Another is what's called a sheitel or a pe'an ochrit, a wig. And so there are some that have issue with the wig, because if the whole concern is that the hair is beautiful and is attractive and can arouse someone, then what are you going and putting something that's more beautiful on your hair? Well, the wig could be it could be even more beautiful. So because of that, some would say no. Like Rav Yosef says not to wear wigs. Instead, the covering should just be a full a covering. But the truth is, many don't follow like this Rav Yosef. Many do, but many don't. And the way I see it is, if a lady is going to do this mitzvah, however she's going to do the mitzvah, she wants to do it with a wig, she wants to do it without a wig, she wants to do it with a scarf. If this is her mitzvah. If she's doing it, kol hakavod to her, tiskul mitzvot. Not everyone does it. Most people don't. The very fact that she wants to do it, however she wants to do it, you don't get nitpicky there. But this is the source. This is the source of where it's discussed. There is one more source in the Torah about a lady uncovering her hair or really unraveling her hair. Anyone know what it is? Yeah, you said it. What did you say? Okay. That's not in the Torah itself. That there's a midrash about On ben Pelet, Korat's colleague. Yes. Not Tamar. Someone said it. Isha Sota, exactly. In Parashat Naso, when it's talking about Isha Sota, which is a woman who was unfaithful to her husband, or at least did many things that reasonably leads the husband to believe that she's been unfaithful. Like he's told her, don't be alone with this guy, and then she does it. And like people have seen her going into seclusion with a guy that the husband already said not to go with. And they were secluded, and it seems that there's a romantic relationship. There's already something wrong there. So Shalom Aleichem. So the Torah tells us that the lady goes to the Mishkan or the Beit HaMikdash, and when they go, they have to. It's an Isha Sota process, and one of the steps of the Isha Sota, it says Ufarat Rosha Isha, the lady should uncover her hair, and the implication there is that her hair was covered, because it's saying, oh, and you should do something unique here by uncovering your hair. So that's another source that's brought up for the topic. Okay, very good. I think this is my goal here, is so that this way you know where the sources are. We spoke about tefach ve'isha erva. Then we spoke about shok, which is the thigh or the leg. We spoke about the voice, and we also spoke about the hair. This daf is where a lot of this discussion comes from. If you want to learn more, search it up. There's so much on it, and if anyone wants any sources, again, there's so much to discuss on this. But I think for now we're going to continue. The main thing is that we need to protect our eyes, guard our eyes, and there are certain things that we should not be looking at, and it's very difficult. But this is what it says in the Shema Yisrael. The third paragraph of Shema Yisrael, what does it say? Don't stray after your eyes. Your eyes see something, a person all of a sudden starts having thoughts, starts getting triggered, and they just lose themselves. They just lose themselves and they start going after things and they get themselves in trouble. A person should try to, as much as possible, to control his eyes, because that is the beginning. If a person can control his eyes, then he won't get drawn into doing sins. Chas v'shalom. Okay, let's continue. Here we go. Whose tefillin am I using? Tomer's or Aaron's? All right, we're gonna use both of them. Here we go. Here we go. You wear tefillin yet? Not yet? Okay, perfect. You came to the perfect shiur. You're gonna learn some very important things tonight. Okay. Amar Rabbi Chanina. Everyone with me? We're gonna continue. We're going to learn a few statements by Rabbi Chanina. Before we say what, oh, Aaron, I see you're in the Zoom. Aaron, I might break your tefillin tonight, okay? And there's nothing you can do about it. I'm sorry. Actually, I'm going to start with breaking Tomers. So the Gemara is going to tell us eyewitness from Rabbi Chanina about Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Okay, eyewitness from Rabbi Chanina. Before we read it, I want to read to you who Rabbi Chanina is. Just one line, or just a few lines from Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Chanina, his father's name was Chama. So Rabbi Chanina bar Chama, one of the greatest students of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who was the author of the Mishnah. Rabbi Chanina was one of the greatest students who was handpicked by him to head his academy after his passing. At the end of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi's life, you're talking about the president of the Jewish people, the one who authored the Mishnah. At the end of his life, when they were at it with him and toward the end of his life, his deathbed, he said, Rabbi Chanina should be the Rosh Yeshiva. I want the head of me, my successor. I'm picking which student of mine is going to be my successor, Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Chanina was his right-hand man. Look at what it says here about Rabbi Chanina. Just one thing, just so now when you see what he's saying, you understand the context. He once explained to his own students, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. So you have Rabbi Chanina is the rabbi of Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, like all-stars. So he once explained to them why he was willing to take the responsibility to rule on questions of halacha without consulting his colleagues. There would be times where people would ask Rabbi Chanina, who we're about to talk about, they would ask him a question, he wouldn't ask anyone, he would just give the answer. So his students would ask him, why don't you ask just to make sure you're right? He says, let me explain to you. Every question that comes to me, I heard Rebbe state that law for it as many times as there are hairs on my head. So he's saying that I've learned so much from Rabbi Yehuda Nasi that when a question comes to me, and maybe he was bald, maybe he didn't go to Turkey, I don't know. But regardless, it's a lot of times. He's saying that I've heard this so many times from Yehuda Nasi. Someone asked me a question, I don't need to think about it. I'll give that answer very simply. Once when a question came, moreover, I actually saw him rule that way in practice at least 3 times. He said, there's questions that have come that I've heard him say like thousands of times, and I've actually seen him in action, ruling out this way in front of someone or at a court or something at least 3 times. So someone's going to ask me that question. I don't need to ask anyone. It's clear to me. This was someone that was by Rebbe always. He was always by him. He witnessed him. He was handpicked by Rebbe to be his successor. Now we're going to hear Rabbi Chanina talk. And when he talks, it's sort of like, whoa, this is gold. You get to hear firsthand testimony of the star student of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Here we go. Share screen. I hope that build-up was worth it. Amar Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Chanina says, Ani ra'iti et Rebbe shetala tefilav. I saw Rebbe hanging his tefillin. He would hang it. Now, what on earth is this talking about? Remember, we were talking about all of the things of a way to respect tefillin. Mitveh, we have a contradiction. Rabbi Chanina, how can you tell us that Rabbi said that Rabbi would hang his tefillin? Mitveh, we have a braita that says, Hatolet tefilav yitalu lo chayav vav ve'ela bar minan. If someone hangs his tefillin, his life will hang in the balance. Dorshei chamrot amru, they learned it out from this pasuk. Vehayu chayecha teluim lacha mineged. Talking about someone's life, it says someone's life is hanging in the balance, hanging in doubt, unsure. Chayecha ze atolet tefilav, it's referring to someone who is hanging his tefillin. Chayim is referring to the tefillin. So the way the pasuk is explained here is a drasha, that when someone hangs their tefillin, which is their life, then their life will be hanging in the balance. Hanging your tefillin is extremely disrespectful. It's It's extremely disrespectful. Okay, now we have to visualize what does that mean to be hanging. But what happened is Rabbi Chanina says, I saw Rebbe hanging his tefillin. The Berachot says hanging your tefillin is disrespectful. Someone who hangs his tefillin, his life is in danger. So lo kashya, it's not a question. Ha birtsuah, ha bekitzitza. It depends where you're hanging from. I'm going to open up your tefillin now, Tomer, okay? It depends if you're hanging it from the box, like this. Let me take off the recording that probably we're not going to show anyone. But here, this tefillin is hanging. I could even put this on the table right over here, where the tefillin is hanging. I don't want this to fall. But you see the tefillin is on the table, whoever's in the room, I put it on the table flat on the surface, and the strings are hanging. So that's hanging. But then I'm doing this for demonstration purposes only. Okay, this is very disrespectful, hanging this way. Okay, and I'm doing this to demonstrate the Gemara. This is called a beritzuah. You're hanging in the tefillin by the ritzuot. Now imagine someone had to go to the bathroom, and outside the bathroom there's a hook. And the guy doesn't know where to put his tefillin. So he takes tefillin, goes like this, and says, oh, look, there's a nice spot right here. I'll just hook it right there, and this is hanging. This is tolet tefilav, someone who is hanging his tefillin. His life will be hanging in the balance, meaning it's disrespect to tefillin. Rabbi Chanina says, I would see Rabbi hanging his tefillin all the time. Okay, you would see him hanging, like, you would see him doing this. That would be fine. Maybe he's putting it up. He wants to go like this, so he goes like that. It's hanging. Okay, fine. And then he puts it on. But to hang it, or let's say, for example, he found the hook. He would take it, put it on, like here's a ledge. Is this on the screen? This is a ledge. Look, Tomer, I hope this doesn't fall. If it does, I'm not fasting. Okay, I'm not fasting. You are. I put this over here, put it on the ledge. Okay, this is really unsafe. There you go. So Rebbe would do this. Rabbi Chanina would see Rebbe hanging the tefillin. How can you do that? It's so disrespectful. No, this is bakitzitza. This is from the box. Don't worry. You're okay. Not that. Look, he's Mr. Akimian. You have to help him out. He's getting nervous. Yeah. No. I'm joking. But you see, like, this is what he would do. So the Gemara says that's why Rabbi Chanina would see Rebbe do it. Okay, let's keep going. The Gemara gives another answer. I have another answer. Lo shana b'ritzuah, lo shana ketitza. It doesn't matter whether you're placing it on the box or you're placing it on the strings. No, both are problematic. Asur. Kitala Rebbe bekistatala. Rebbe, when Rebbe would hang it, he wasn't doing it like this. He wasn't doing it like this. I'll show you how he was doing it. This is where Aaron's tefillin comes in handy. This is what he was doing in the keys, in the bag. He would go like this. Okay, you can't really see the recording, but I'm putting this right there on the chair. It's hanging. You see, it's actually dangling back and forth. Okay, I want to show the video. Look, you see, it's hanging, dangling back and forth. This is what Rebbe would do. Rebbe would put it over here, dangling back and forth. And Rabbi Chanina says, I see he would hang his tefillin. Okay, yeah, you're hanging your tefillin, but you're not hanging your tefillin like this, bare, on the box, or even on the wraps. You're doing it in the kiss. Okay, that's fine. So the Gemara says, well, what's the problem? It's covered. Of course, that's okay. Like, what is Rabbi Chanina coming and saying, I saw him hanging it? Okay, so yeah, it's in a case. What's the problem? So the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. What is that coming to teach us? What is Rabbi Chanina coming with his testimony coming to teach us? You might have thought a Sefer Torah is never allowed to be hanging. You're never allowed to be hanging a Sefer Torah. You can't take a Sefer Torah, tie a string around it, and hang it onto something. You can't wear a Sefer Torah as a backpack. Well, yeah, it has to be placed onto something. It shouldn't be hanging. Okay, it has to have some sort of a support under it. So you might think the same thing about tefillin. Kamash Malan, you come to learn that no, Rebbe used to do it. Now I have a question for you, and the art scroll I believe talks about it. I know, I'm sorry, I saw it in the Mishnah Berurah. I didn't see it in the art scroll. Maybe I did. Honestly, I don't know, but I saw it in the Mishnah Berurah for sure. The question is, when we're talking about hanging, here's what happened. Rebbe would hang it according to Rabbi Chanina. And the Berachot says if you hang it, it's disrespect, that's putting your life in balance. Okay? So how do we deal with this? One opinion says, the first answer is, Rebbe would hang it from the box, like what I did over here. That's okay. But hanging it by the strings like this, that's not okay. The second answer is no, both of them is a problem. Hanging it bare is a problem no matter what. But once you put it in the case, then you're allowed to hang it. Okay? I have a question. Okay, I'm putting on my tefillin. Are you ready? Okay, I just put on my tefillin shel yad. Daniel, this is special for you, so you learn. I put on my whole tefillin shel yad, and now I gotta put on my tefillin shel rosh. Okay? What do you do? Someone want to demonstrate how they put this on? Because there's two ways to do this. Okay? Way number one. See what I did? I placed it on my head. Way number two. Ready?
Lazy.
Okay. You see the difference? What did I do in way number two? I let it like hang, literally hang. I grabbed it by here and it's hanging. Have you ever seen anyone do this? You've never seen? You've never seen people do this? You have seen people do it. I've seen people do this for sure. I've seen people do this very often. So the Mishnah Berurah discusses whether this is allowed or not. And the Mishnah Berurah says how some say that if you're doing it to put it on, this is not called hanging. This is not called hanging. This is in the process of putting it on, and this is how I put it on. This is how it's comfortable for me to put on. So that's okay. But others say, no, you see, there's a disrespect for this thing to be dangling. You see how it's dangling? It's disrespectful. Again, I'm not doing it out of disrespect. Now I'm doing this for demonstration purposes. But you're letting it dangle back and forth. It's disrespectful. And therefore, when this is something that for sure you should do, Daniel, this is for you. Whenever you put on your tefillin, you're gonna open this up. Okay, you take it very careful, full support under the hand. You go like this. Don't let go. Hold. Put it over. Put it on. The tefillin should never be hanging. Why? This Gemara. And Rebbe, who would see it hanging, he would never let it hang from the strings. He would never let the box be dangling. At the very least, he would be letting the strings hang down as opposed to wrapping it up. Maybe he had to go to the bathroom or whatever. He takes it very quickly, puts it over here. Fine, maybe that's what he would do, but never like this. So this is where the Mishnah Berurah says that some allow it. So if you see someone going like this when they want to put it on, if you see someone going like this, it's okay. There's some leniency because it's in the context of wearing it. And since it's in the context of wearing it, it's not hanging. It's like it takes a second. It's like it would be the same as if someone does this, right? And they want to take off their kippah for a second. You know, sometimes you take off. You know, oh, how are you not wearing a kippah? It's just half a second. I need to put it on. I need to adjust my kippah. It's okay. It's part of the process. But others, the Mishnah Berurah says, like no, you should never let it dangle. It's disrespectful. So it's something you should be careful for when you're putting on your tefillin. Don't let it dangle. Okay, good. Good show and tell. Good demonstration. Thank you, Aaron, for the tefillin bag. Thank you, Tomer. Baruch Hashem. Let's just hang this over here. Okay, I'm gonna leave that over there. All right, let's keep going. So you guys understand who Rabbi Chanina was, right? Rabbi Chanina Bar Chama was the top student of Rabbi Dan Asi. So far, he saw Rabbi doing something with his tefillin, okay? But now we're gonna get some real action, okay? It was a busy day one day, and it didn't all happen in one day. But Rabbi Chanina is going to tell us that everything that he saw Rabbi doing during tefillah, okay, during the prayers, Rabbi did things. And he's going to tell us everything. And this man, Rabbi Chanina, was with him at all times. So he knew. Are you ready? First time I read this Gemara, I was like, what on earth is going on? Lama Rabbi Chanina? Rabbi Chanina is telling us, Ani ra'iti et Rabbi. I saw Rabbi during his tefillah. Shegihek, he burped, he belched during the Amidah. Once he burped, like let one out. Ufihek, he yawned, big yawn. Benit atesh, he sneezed. Varak, he spat. Umimashmesh bevigdo, he would move his clothing, which is explained as if he would have some sort of a louse on him, some sort of a bug, he would like move his clothing to try to kill the bug. You know, there's a fly on you, and it's like kill it. This is during the Amidah. That's why it didn't all happen in one day. A burp, a yawn, a sneeze, a scratch of the louse. Avalo hayamit atef, but he would not put his talit on if his talit would fall down. This is also something very common. Let's say you're praying your Amidah, and I don't know, you're wearing your active leisure wear from your Lululemons or something that's very, very, very and then after you put oil on it. Okay, so you put your talit on, and then when you put your talit on, you're in the middle of your amidah. You go like this, and then you go up, and your talit goes down. Okay, so now your talit's on the floor. I'm in the middle of the amidah. I'm focusing on my amidah. Should I be like, like this? Should I do that, or should I just let it go? Do I continue praying without my talit? So what Rabbi Hanina says is, I would see Rabbi, if it would fall, he'd just leave it. He wouldn't try to pick it up. He fell, it fell. You keep praying, you keep going. Okay? Aval lo haya mitatev. And there's a discussion about whether it like completely fallen off that he wouldn't put it back on, or even if it would just like slide off, like would he even readjust it? Right? So there's a dispute, but let's just say simply that if it would fall off completely, he wouldn't put it back on. And last piece of testimony, ukhshehu mefahek, and if he would ever yawn during the tefillah, haya maniach yado al santero, he would put his hand on his chin like this. This is Rabbi Chanina. Sorry, I have to yawn right now. This is Rabbi Chanina's testimony about Rabbi. During his tefillah, he would burp, he would spit, he would sneeze, he would what? He would yawn while covering his mouth, but if his talit fell, he would leave it. Okay? Now the Gemara is going to go through each and every one of these, and we're going to learn halachot about what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do during your tefillah. Meitvei, I have a contradiction. This braita is about tefillah in general and talks about a lot of things, and it's going to include some of Rebbe's actions, but we have to learn the whole thing. Okay? Hamashmiya kolo b'tfilato. If someone says his tefillah loud, that it's audible, that people can hear it, saying it loud enough that others in the room could hear it, hareze mikitane amana. This is someone that is has a little faith, doesn't really have emunah in Hashem, because the person is saying, maybe if I say a little bit louder, or maybe then Hashem will hear me. If I say it low, my answers won't get prayer. My tefillot won't get answered. I have to say it higher. You think Hashem can't hear you? So that's why it's someone who's lacking some emunah in Hashem. That's the first thing. If you're saying it loud enough for others who can hear you. Number two, hamakbia kolo b'tfilato harizeh min nevi'ei sheker. This second one is, if more than it being audible to others, but if you start shouting and start saying, oh, and you start saying your tefillot really loud. This is the practice of the Nevi'ei Sheker, of the story with Eliyahu Navi, is that he was having a face-off, a duel. Anyone know the story? With the Nevi'ei Baal. It's a very fun story. We should read it. Okay, we'll read it. We're going to get up to the pasuk where Eliyahu Navi starts mocking them because they're praying for their korban to be answered, and it's not being answered. So Eliyahu Navi is saying like, maybe your God is sleeping. Just say it a little bit louder. So they start saying louder, louder. They start going louder. Like maybe louder, maybe louder. Maybe he just had a late night last night. Like this is Eliyahu Navi was sort of having fun with it, but they were saying it very loud. And when they were tefillot weren't getting answered, they were getting louder and louder and louder. So that's why it's saying someone who thinks that the tefillot are not being answered because of the level of their voice, and they're doing it loud, and they do it louder so that Hashem will answer them. This is the practice of false prophets. Okay, so you see from here these 2 points that when someone is praying in Amidah, it should not be heard. However, there's a big machloket. There's a big machloket whether the person himself should hear it, right? Machloket is between Shulchan Aruch and the Zohar, or really Arizal rather. And the Ben Ish Chai holds like the Arizal here. According to the Kabbalah, according to the Arizal, even you should not be able to hear yourself. But according to Shulchan Aruch, you have to be able to hear yourself. It's just that others shouldn't be able to hear you. And this is what the halacha is. Now, if someone wants to follow Arizal, so at least you know there's a difference here. But according to Shulchan Aruch, according to halacha, according to the Talmud, you have to say it loud enough to hear yourself. Oh, this is yawning. Sorry. You have to say it loud enough to hear yourself, but no one else should be able to hear you. Okay? This is what we said so far, and we're going to come back to this. This is the braita, but this is why we're quoting the braita. Migahek umifahek. If someone belches or someone yawns during the Amidah, hareze migase haruach. if someone is doing this during the prayer, it's like someone who is arrogant. It's someone who is uncouth. Someone who is bitarbiat. Okay? You have no manners. In the middle of your Amidah, you're burping. What is this? It's disrespectful. Hamit atesh betfilato. If someone sneezes in his tefillah, siman ralo. It's a very bad thing. Don't worry, relax. I sneeze all the time during my Amidah. We're going to see what this means. But let's just read it for now. If someone sneezes during this prayer, bad, very bad, siman ralo, it's a bad sign. V'yesh omrim, some say, nikar shehu mechuar. It's not that it's a bad sign, it just shows that there's something wrong. It shows that he's repulsive. It shows that there's something wrong with him. Okay, we're going to get into that. Next, harak bitfilato, if someone spits during their prayer, ki'ilu rak b'fnei melech, it's like you're spitting in the face of the king, which obviously it's not proper. Imagine spitting in the face of the king. So, how, and as they write this leading question, in light of all this, how could Rabbi Yehuda Nasi have done all that while he was praying? Rabbi Chanina told us that Rebbe burped during tefillah, he sneezed during tefillah, and he spat during tefillah. So the question is, if the Braita says you can't do these things, how did Rebbe do it? The Gemara says, Bishlema megahek umfahek lo kasha. When it talks about sneezing, when it talks about belching and yawning, it's not a question. Why? Kan leonso, kan lirtzono. Sometimes it's not your fault. Leonso means it happens by accident. Lirtzono means you choose to do it. So Rebbe didn't choose to burp. A burp came out. Sometimes a burp comes out. All you got to do is eat 6 hot dogs and then have a bottle of seltzer and try not to burp. It's happening. If not, go get your stomach checked out because that gas has to go somewhere. Okay, so there are times where you eat something, the burp's going to come. Okay, so it happens. But then there's times where you can like make a burp. Can anyone do it right now for us? Don't, but you can. I saw you try to do it right now. Yeah, Tomer just burped right now. Yeah, exactly. You can try to bring something up. So when it says that it's disrespectful, what was the lashon of the Braita? Someone who burps in his tefillah, it's someone who is arrogant and bitarviat, someone who is uncouth, gas ruach, haughty, someone that's haughty. That's if the person chooses to do it. But if someone has either belched by accident or yawn by accident, that's not a sign of arrogance. It happened by accident. So that's what happened with Rebbe. He yawned. Sometimes you yawn, but you don't have to choose to do it. Ela mitatesh kasha. Excuse me. Yeah.
But doesn't that go without saying? Like
Yeah, we're in the middle of a flow. We're in the middle of a flow, and you're going to see why it needs to be said. You're going to see because what you're doing is you have a few actions here. You have an action of belching, and you have an action of yawning, but you also have an action of sneezing. So what we want to say is, okay, maybe you distinguish by saying whether you did it on purpose or you did it by accident. But if that's the case, how does sneezing become an issue, right? However, the contradiction between sneezing and sneezing, because sneezing is always by accident. You cannot conjure up a sneeze. You can't. So, Elon, this is why it's important, because we have a list of things that Rebbe did, and we have a bright up things that you shouldn't do. And on that list is burping. We can say, okay, don't burp on purpose, but if it happens by accident, fine. You can say yawning. Okay, don't yawn on purpose, but if it happens by accident, fine. But sneezing, we say don't sneeze on purpose, but if it happens by accident, fine. Who can sneeze on purpose? Can you sneeze? Saying hachu is not actually sneezing. In an actual sneeze, it's impossible to conjure that up. You cannot do it voluntarily. So it says, clearly that can't be the difference here. Mitatesh nami lo kasha, you're right. We're not talking about whether someone voluntarily sneezes or involuntarily sneezes. We're talking about 2 types of sneezes. One from upstairs and one from downstairs. Mitatesh nami lo kasha. Ha kan milamala, sneezing from the mouth, which is something that someone cannot control. If he has to sneeze, it's okay. Kan milamata, and there's another type of sneeze which comes from the backside. In other words, passing gas, or in other words, farting. Okay, this happens during the tefillah, That is something that it says that someone who does it is haughty. It's like, what is this? You're sitting and you're watching football and you're just burping and you're belching and you're farting and you're in the middle of your tefillah. Can you hold it in? Yes, you could hold it in. Look, there are times where someone can't hold it in, which we're going to talk about that. But we're talking about if you could, there are times where someone can hold it in and they just choose not to. They just want to let it out, right? So that the Braita is telling us is disgusting. During tefillah, it's arrogant, it's uncouth. But if Rebbe would do it, over here, what we're talking about with Rebbe is we're talking about a sneeze. Sneezing is what would be acceptable. That's what Rabbi Chanina saw Rebbe doing. But when the Braita tells us not be mitatesh, it's talking about from the back. Now, I love this. Dama Rabbi Zera, because Rabbi Zera said, Ha milta ibala li mi Rav Hamnuna. Rabbi Zera says, I learned something from the house of Rav Hamnuna, from the Beit Midrash of Rav Hamnuna. Utkila li kikuli tamudai, and it's like valuable to me, like everything else that I've learned in my entire life. There's one thing that I've learned. This is his favorite Gemara. If you ask him, what's your favorite Gemara? This was his yearbook quote, right? So Rav Zera, this is his yearbook quote. This is his number one thing that he loved more than everything all combined. What was it? Hamit atesh betfilato. If you sneeze while you pray, siman yafelo. It's a good sign. Kishem sheosim lo nachadruach milamata. Just as you feel good when you sneeze, you feel good like a high. You know, you sneeze, you let it out. It feels good. So the same way during your tefillah, you sneeze, which feels good. Kach osim lo nachadruach milamata. So too, Hashem just accepted your tefillot. So Rabbi Zera loved this. Why? I'm assuming Rabbi Zera had like terrible allergies and was just sneezing all day long. Couldn't get through an Amidah without sneezing. And then he once heard a Dvar Torah that says, if you ever sneeze during your tefillah, that means Hashem loves you. And he's like, this is the most important Gemara I've ever heard in my entire life. Why? Because he's sneezing all the time. So you see, sneezing during tefillah is a good thing. Not only is it allowed, but it's even a good thing. That's why when the Braita says don't sneeze during tefillah, it can't be talking about sneezing. It's a nice way of saying passing gas. Okay? So now, what we're doing is we're going one by one. Rebbe burped, Braita says don't burp, Rebbe, it happened by accident. Rebbe yawned, Braita says don't yawn, it happened by accident. Rebbe sneezed, Braita says don't sneeze. No, the Braita is saying don't pass gas. Sneezing is fine. Sneezing is actually a good thing. Rabbi Zera said it's a siman yafer. Rav Hamnuna says it's a good thing. But don't pass gas during your tefillah. Next, spitting. So Rebbe would spit during tefillah. Okay? Ela rak arak kasha. Why would he spit if the Braita says not to spit? Rak arak nami lo kasha. It's also not an issue because when Rebbe defshar kid Rav Yehuda, it could be that he spat like Rav Yehuda. What does that mean? Rav Yehuda gave you a way to spit during Amidah. Look, it happens sometimes. All of a sudden, you have like a phlegm come up, right? You have a cold. You took a lot of Mucinex. You know what Mucinex does? It's an expectorant. It brings all of the mucus up, and it's in your mouth. So now it's there. So Rav Yehuda tells us what to do if that happens during your tefillah. Dama Rav Yehuda, haya omed b'tefillah v'nizdamen lo rok. You're standing there in your tefillah, and all of a sudden you have to spit. So what should you do? Mavli'o betalito. Put it in your talit. Okay, take your talit and go. By the way, this doesn't necessarily have to mean your prayer shawl. Talit could be like a handkerchief, right? Like a handkerchief. And it used to be. Right now, you go buy blocks of Kleenex because these things just come out from everywhere. That's not how it used to be. How would it used to be? You'd have a handkerchief. You'd have a handkerchief if you needed to blow your nose. You take it and then you fold it again, put it back in there. It'll dry. Right? And then once in a while you wash this thing, maybe like once a year, whatever it is. But you have like a handkerchief. So this is what I was talking about. What he's telling you is if you have to spit, you know what you're allowed to do? You're allowed to put it in a napkin. You're allowed to in the middle of your Amidah. What are you not allowed to do? Like that. That you're not allowed to do during Amidah. Of course not. But to put it in a napkin, just to go like this, you're allowed to. That's what Rabbi Yehuda tells us. Ve'im talit na'ehu. But let's say he's wearing something very nice. So you could spit it in your afarksuto. The way it's explained is that they used to wear like turbans. They would have hats, and then like you could take like a part of the turban and just like in the corner spit. If your clothing is too nice, so then put it in your hat. The idea being that you're going to go wash it afterwards. But the main point here is that you are allowed to spit into something. during your tefillah. Okay? Ravina baka'eh acharei Rav Asher. So one time it's a great story. It's an unbelievable story. Ravina was praying Amidah behind Rav Asher. Okay, imagine when you go to Kanisa one morning and you're praying behind one rabbi is praying behind the other rabbi. Nizdamen lorok, he had to spit. Okay, let's assume the story is more fun. The rabbi who was in the front has to spit. So Rav Asher, all of a sudden he has to spit. Okay, patke la'acharei. So what does he do? Spits backward. He didn't realize Ravina was right behind him, and he just turned around and sent a logi right behind him. Okay, what happens? After the Amidah, Ravina said to Rav Asher, "Los avar la mar had Rav Yehuda mavli'o b'afraksuto." What are you doing spinning on the floor? Like, okay, you missed me. I was safe, but I saw you spinning. You like spit right towards me. Don't you hold like what Rav Yehuda told us that what are you supposed to do? Do in your clothing. Do it in your handkerchief. Do it in your hat. Do it in something. Don't do it right on the floor. By the way, their floors weren't marble like this. Their floors were they had dirt. They had dirt. That's something it would get absorbed. So Amarle, Rav Asher gave us the answer that probably every single one of us are thinking. Ana anina dati. I'm very delicate or vas. If you were to tell me to spit into my clothing, I would rather just spit in my hand and hold on to it and then go wash my hands. But in my clothing, then what am I going to do? I'm going to have to go buy a new shirt right now. So this is what he's saying. He's saying, you think I'm going to spit in my clothing? Sorry, I'm very vas. You know, how do you translate vas into English? OCD. Yeah, very OCD. I cannot do that, so I spit on the floor. So you see the flow here. Braita says don't spit. Rebbe would spit. How is that possible? Well, we said, okay, it's possible like Rabbi Yehuda, that he's spitting on his shirt, or maybe in his handkerchief, or maybe he's even doing it on the floor because he's the type of person that he cannot put it in his own clothing. He's very anina dati. He's very OCD. In that case, it's allowed. So now you have this discussion, but hold on a second. So now you're permitting him to spit. All of a sudden, you're permitting to spit. So what's the difference? When the first person said it, when someone spits, they're spitting in front of the king. But Rav Asher is actually spitting. So what's the difference? When are you allowed to spit and when are you not allowed to spit? So I'll tell you I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story. When I was in high school, during the summertime, there was like a time period where I got very much into playing softball and baseball, and I would go like every night play softball and baseball. And for some reason, once you're on the field and you're just spending time there, people start spitting, just for no reason whatsoever. There's some people that are eating tochmeh, they're eating like a thing, or they're chewing tobacco, like you see these MLB players. But if you're watching MLB, the entire time, sorry, I actually just let something out. The entire time they're spitting. I remember when I was in high school, all of a sudden I just started getting a spitting habit. Like, and I'm thinking, what am I doing? Why on earth am I doing this? It makes no sense. What is it? Just because everyone's doing it? I was not chewing anything. It was what? Maybe the dirt is going in my mouth. Like, no one does this. I guess they'll probably do this in football also. I guess whenever there's like grass on the floor and you will for absolutely no reason, you're in the middle of your army, that's when you just start spitting. No. So if someone has to, that's what we're learning through Rebbe. If someone has to, then it would be permitted to do it. Do it in a proper way. Do it inside of a napkin. You could say the same thing about blowing your nose. If you have to blow your nose, you can do it in a clean way into a napkin. But if you don't have to, now is not the time to go spitting. It's disrespectful to now spit the way they do it at one of these baseball games. It's just doing it for no reason. It's not appropriate. Again, keep in mind, they didn't pray indoors. They were praying outdoors. So it's not like they were making the canisa dirty, or even indoors. But it could be that the floor had dirt on it. And then maybe they just had rugs or carpets, but there was dirt that they could spit on that area. But still, it's disrespectful. Good? Good? All right.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I think we spoke about a different rabbi that also was like this Vaspas type of thing about showering and stuff.
Yeah, who was it?
Was it Rabbi Yehuda Nasi or someone? Or
It was not, well, no, it was not Nasi.
the Nasi, from what I remember.
He wasn't
No?
Nasi. Correct. Someone's got to know this. Who was the one who was a Vasvas? He would shower, no idols. Istanis. Very good. It was an Istanis. What daf? Josh, did you do this stuff yet? When I think it was the Avelut, it was the one with the funeral. So all of a sudden he toes. The Khatan, yeah, there you got it. The Khatan stubs his toes and he falls like into a funeral or something, right? So that's because Rabban Gamliel's wife died, and when Rabban Gamliel's wife died, he showered. And they said, Rebbe, didn't you teach us that you're not supposed to shower? And he says, Ani am istanis. Why did we say that? Because it was related to the thing before, where when someone Khatan gets married, they don't have to say Shema that night. Rebbe got married and he said Shema. And they said to him, Rebbe, you don't, not Rebbe, Rabban Gamliel, said, he got married and he said Shema. They said, you don't have to. He said, well, you're going to hold me back from doing Kabbalat Mahut Shamayim? I'm not going to stop. So, and then there was one more with Tevi. He had a servant that was not Jewish and he mourned him. And we said, you're not supposed to mourn someone that's in your home because people are going to think that he's a family member. And he says, Tevi is different. Tevi is different. I'm going to mourn him. So Rabban Gamliel did these three things. So yes, you're correct. Good. That was a good review.
Yeah, but like similarly, like can someone just decide on their own to not follow something? Like,
Okay, it's a good question. It's a very good question about like who is the Istanis police or the Anina Da'ati police? Like who is going to judge you? The answer is okay, yeah, there's like some sort of an honor system. If someone it's really bothering them, there are times where things are allowed. And like who's gonna know? No one will know. You're correct. There's like no one is gonna come and say, hey, you're not legit. If someone is, these are important halachot to know that there are some times where things would be permitted. And this is one of them. You tell the guy to spit in his clothing. I would argue to say that probably the way Rav Asher was very sensitive and didn't want to spit in his clothing, probably 99.5% of people nowadays is similar. No one wants to spit in their clothing. But imagine back then when you would have clothing that you would wear for a very long time and it would get soily and sweaty and you would only wash it once a month. So what happens? It gets a little bit of more saliva. The saliva washes it out. It's actually adding water and it's cleaning it. It's cleaner now than it was before. Like this is like the type of mentality. But Rav Asher, maybe he wasn't like that. Maybe he had nicer clothing. Or maybe he was the first day that he wore his clothing and I can't do that today. But you're right. This type of thing, I would argue that today everyone is probably considered sensitive with this respect. And by the way, when it comes to Avelut, Shalonada, Ilan, you're asking a very good question. Rav Ben Chaim says that nowadays we all have the law of an istanis with respect to aninut. Rabbi Moshe Aziz and Rabbi Dr. Avram Ben Chaim, they have a book on Hilchot Avelut, and they quote it a few times. The Rabbi Ben Chaim says that nowadays we're all considered istanis. So what does that mean? During the Shivat Yimei Avelut, we're not supposed to shower. Not supposed to shower at all. But if it's during the summer, and it's very, very, very hot, very sweaty. So the way Mr. Basalian says a person should do it is, and this is the way that I believe the Ramah brings it down, is they could do like sponge bath. Take a cloth, wet it, wipe your body, wipe the, what do they call it? Whatever. I don't want to like offend anyone. They like just wipe the like certain parts of your body and you could clean yourself off. But you could even in Istanis, where Rabbi Ben Chaim would permit during the hot summer, once, twice during the 7 days of Avelut, to take a cold shower, not a hot, enjoyable shower, and not a half-hour shower. A 5 minute, 4 minute, 2 minutes, whatever, just to get the sweat off your body. Why? And he says, because nowadays, when we have showers in our homes, we're all considered istanis for this halacha. Yes, Mr. Korbani, I see you want to say something.
Yes, I was saying maybe that's exactly it, that that's how, let's say, Rabbi Ben Chaim can be lenient in something, especially to a person when they go one-on-one and ask him, this is the source that they know for this, for example, you can be lenient because if the rabbi at the time, he himself was his skin was so sensitive that he had to do this or that, from this, they learn that you can be lenient in some cases.
Exactly. You have the rule, and then you have the leniency. And when can you use the leniency? When someone needs it. And to Ilan's point, can it be abused? Of course. Every leniency can be abused. But we're talking about someone who wants to do something the proper way. What's the proper law? If someone is very sensitive, then in this situation they would be allowed to. Very good. Very good, Mr. Korbani. All right. Cool. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. So, you understand the flow. We were talking about tefillin. Tefillin in the bathroom, whatever. Then we had Rabbi Chanina says, oh, one time I saw Rabbi hanging his tefillin. So we spoke about that. But once we talked about Rabbi Chanina seeing Rabbi doing things, then Rabbi Chanina says, well, once I started, hold on. I would see him burp. I would see him yawn. I would see him spit. I would see him sneeze. I would see him drop his talit and leave it on the floor. I would see him do all of these things. And then as we analyze that, we quoted a braita that says, person shouldn't do these things. But while we did that, we said other things a person shouldn't do during tefillah. You see the flow? What are the other things a person should do? Shouldn't raise their voice. Shouldn't speak loudly. Shouldn't be audible for others and shouldn't be screaming. Okay? So let's see the discussion of those. Why not? What's the problem? Hamashmiya kolo b'tfilato harezeh miketana yamana. If someone's voice can be heard during the tefillah, then that person is among those that have little faith. Amar Rav Huna says, Lo shanu ela she'achol lechaven et libo belachash. We're talking about someone who can concentrate without saying it loudly. Aval en yachol lechaven et libo belachash mutar. But if someone cannot concentrate, and saying it louder helps them concentrate, they're allowed to. So you see, Rav Huna is qualifying the statement of the Braita. The Braita says, when you pray Amidah, you shouldn't be saying it so loud. And if you do, it's like you have little faith. What, you think Hashem can't hear you? But Rav Huna says, but what happens if a guy comes up to you and says, it helps me focus? By saying it, it helps me focus. Am I allowed to? He says, oh. If you're focusing, if it's helping you to focus, then you're allowed to. But that's only if you're alone. But if you're with the group, you're going to come to bother other people. So you see the all of the back and forth. On one hand, you shouldn't say your Amidah loud, because saying it loud makes it seem that you think Hashem can't hear you. You don't need to say it loud. But what happens if it helps you concentrate? Then you are allowed to do it loud. But what happens if it's going to bother other people? Then you're not allowed to do it loud. So let's say, here's the case. A person wants to pray Arvit, and happens to be he's praying at home. No one else is praying at the same time. And it helps him to pray audibly, the way I'm speaking right now. It helps him to be able to focus by saying it aloud. Is he allowed to? This is what Rav Huna is telling us, that he is allowed to, and it is not coming to show that, oh, I don't think Hashem could hear me. Okay? Now I have a big question. Mr. Akimian, our head Gabai Rashi, I have a question for you. Minhag of our Kehillah. So we're learning here that the Amidah should be said low, shouldn't be said loud. That's why we call the Amidah the Lachash, which means the low. Here's the Minhag question. What is the Minhag of the Kehillah on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur for the Lachash? What do we do? But you're the Gabai Rashi.
So one of the people in the Kahal that read it in a louder voice, but not too loud, in between.
Okay.
It was not too loud, not too low, for the rest of the Sibur. That was the Minhag. And a lot of the Minhagim still continue that Minhag.
Okay. So you see what Mr. Akimian said? Something very precise. He explained, look, they didn't have Sidurim. Someone would say the Lachash that we're learning now that you shouldn't say loud. Someone would say it out loud, but not so loud. Would say it in a lower voice. Okay? And then he said, and some of the minyanim continue nowadays. I have a question. In light of our Gemara now, is it a proper minhag or an improper minhag? Everyone is scared to say anything, right? Ah, okay, very good. You guys are picking up on it. They're saying something very nice. What is Rav Huna telling us? Rav Huna says, look, if it helps you concentrate, fine, but not if it disturbs people. Oh, but you're bringing up a very good point. This isn't disturbing people. This, this. Okay, but the way Mr. Hakimian explained that this is because they didn't have a Siddur, it's coming to help people. So if it's coming to help them, it's okay. But let's say you're in a room where everyone has a Siddur and everyone knows how to read and it's not helping anyone, then that would be a situation where you see, even though this is a minhag, if it's not helping, then why should we do it? So in fact, in our keilah, we'll have some minyanim that continue, and there are some people that always tell me it's very helpful. Some people find it very helpful. I myself don't necessarily find it helpful, but I try to drown it out. And I'm pretty good at drowning it out. By the way, if you're a Sephardi, you're a lot better at drowning it out. Why? Because when we pray, we always have a chazan up there saying something, right? Oof, the Ashkenazim, the chazan gets up there, he just says 4 words, and then he comes back 10 minutes later, says another 4 words, and then before you know, they start the Amidah. Where were you this whole time? And then when Ashkenazi comes inside a Sephardi minyan, who cannot do a thing. I've seen this before. Ashkenazi is like, stop talking. What is he saying? Why does he keep saying it? Be quiet. Like they can't. I remember in high school, we had once when the Sephardi minyan took over the Ashkenazi minyan. We would do this sometimes, once in a while. Inclusion is very nice. They would bring the Sephardi minyan to the Ashkenazi minyan. The whole school is praying Sephardi. All of the Ashkenazis got their excuse. I can't focus. The guy that is talking, I can't focus. I can't pray. I can't think. It gets into their head. Okay, fine. I get it. So like, if you're always involved in thinking about quiet, then all of a sudden you have some voice you can't think. But you're able to drown it out. Okay, I want to show you Shulchan Aruch. Are you ready? We're going to look at Shulchan Aruch because this is community minhag. Community minhag. Tur Shulchan Aruch Siman Kuf Aleph Seif Bet. Are you ready? Tur Shulchan Aruch Siman Kuf Aleph Seif Bet. Okay, Mr. Akiman said it perfectly. Where is it? Okay. Here we go. Seif Bet. You know what? I'll start with Seif Aleph. We're going to do some Shulchan Aruch. Halacha number 1. Hamitpalel. When one is praying, Sarich sheyechaven bechol habrachot. You need to focus for the entire thing. For the entire tefillah, you should focus on what you're saying. You're saying something, you should think about what you're saying. Ve'im eno yachol lechaven bekulam. But let's say I can't. Let's say it's too much for me. Let's say I have ADD. Let's say I know that I'm not going to be able to focus for the whole thing. Lefachot yechaven ba'avot. At least for the first bracha. The first bracha, you have to focus and know what you're saying. You should know the translation. You should know word for word. What are the words that are coming out of my mouth? Im lo kiven ba'avot. But let's say you didn't even do that. I don't know what you're doing. You're just saying the words without thinking. If a person does not have kavanah for that first bracha, even if afterwards they get back on track and they have kavanah for the rest, the halacha says, Shulchan Aruch says, you have to go back. The first bracha is critical. You have to know what you're saying. And if you don't know what you're saying and you don't focus on what you're saying, your Amidah didn't count. Even if you fixed it. Haga, but here's the Ashkenazi psak, which we end up mostly relying on this. V'haidana, nowadays, en chozrin b'shvil chesron kavanah. If you didn't focus, don't go back and say it again. You didn't focus? Don't go and say, okay, I'm going to say it again. Why? Because you're not going to think about it the next time either. Who are you fooling? You couldn't have kavanah the first time, so you're going to go say it again? You're not going to have kavanah the second time either. What's the point of saying it back again? Okay, so this is actually how we say, when you start the Amidah, clear your thoughts, focus, and at least get yourself for the first bracha. After that, try not to lose focus, but if you do, okay, at least you started off on the right foot. And Shulchan Aruch tells us that if you don't have focus on the first bracha, you have to say it again. Here is why I want to quote this. Lo yitpalel belibo levad. A person shouldn't just have this in his heart. He shouldn't just think the words. Sometimes you see someone praying like this. Lips don't move, eyes moving. No. Says the Shulchan Aruch, that's not enough. Ela mechatech hadivarim bisfatav. A person needs to enunciate. Umashmiya leoznav. His ears have to hear what he says. Belachash. Silently. Velo yashmiya kolo. But others should not be able to hear him. It should be loud enough that he could hear himself, but not so loud that others would hear him. But let's say I cannot concentrate. By saying it so low, I cannot concentrate. Meaning, by saying it louder, it'll help me concentrate. Mutar kolo. Then you are allowed to raise your voice. Okay, but what did we say about that? You have to make sure. Okay, very good. That's if you're praying by yourself. But if you're praying with others and you have neighbors, asur, then you're not allowed to raise your voice, even though it's going to help you concentrate. Why? Because you're going to come to bother other people. Okay? And next, Yesh Omrim, some say, Shebe Rosh Hashanah, V'Yom Kippurim, on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Mutar lashmiya kolo b'tfilato. One is allowed to say his Amidah louder, afilu betzibur, even or with other people around them. Haga, the Rama says, v'chenu hagin, and that is our minhag. Umikol makom yizharu shelo le'agbiya kolam yoter midat, but don't do it so loud. Okay, you could do it a little bit louder. Now, what are they talking about? Is Shulchan Aruch talking about our case? He's not really talking about there's one Sidur. He's telling you, you should say it lowly. You should say the tefillah low. But what happens if by doing it louder, it helps me with my kavanah? He says, okay, good. But not if it bothers other people. But yes, if it is Rosh Hashanah. Because on that day, you need to have extra kavanah. So even if it bothers other people, some say you are allowed to say it out loud. And the Rama says, and that's our minhag. So according to Shulchan Aruch, he quotes it as an opinion. He doesn't say yes or no. He says some allow it. And the Rama says this is the minhag. So believe it or not, when the community does this, next time that someone asks this community, Mr. Akimian, you gave the perfect answer. I just have one more thing I want you to add to it. And when someone asks you, say, by the way, this is sourced in the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch says on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, some people do it. But it's important to keep in mind, like it's the same what John said, and the same what we're saying, that if you have a Sidur and it's not really necessary, then the lacha should be lower. Okay? So I guess I wanted to quote this because this is where we're learning this Gemara. And this is where Shulchan Aruch is talking about it. Someone just colored on my screen. Who was that? Okay. This is what happens. This is the when they come and they throw paint on the painting. All of a sudden, like someone's ruining my Gemara. They don't like the treatment of the Gemara here. Okay, but this is the idea. The idea is that there is a source for it. There is a source for it. But you see the balance. On one hand, you're not supposed to say it loud. Why? Hashem can hear you no matter what. Okay. On the other hand, what happens if it helps me have kavanah? Okay, if it helps you have kavanah, then you could do it. On the other hand, what if it interrupts other people? Okay, if it interrupts other people, then you can't do it. Okay, on the other hand, I have four hands. On the other hand, what happens if it's Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur? Okay, some will say, all right, it's okay in this situation, even if it comes to disturb other people. And so you see, this minhag that we have, there's a basis for it. It's not something that they just made up. It's quoted explicitly in Shulchan Aruch here. There's a source for it. So a community minhag that has it, they definitely could continue doing it. According to the Rama, he says that's our minhag, that we should actually do it. And I've heard it is helpful for some people, and for other people it's not. Okay, hopefully we have many minyanim, people who choose where they can go to, where they want to go to. Now, the last thing I want to say is just wrapping up, talking about all of the actions during the tefillah. The burping, the yawning, the sneezing, the passing gas. We spoke about this before, and it's worth speaking about it again. When someone goes into the tefillah, they should try to go in fully prepared. That means if you have a little bit of mucus, try to take care of it before you start your Amidah. If you feel like something in your nose, blow your nose before the tefillah. If you feel like you have to clear something out, if you feel like you have to go to the bathroom because you feel like you've been passing gas, do that before tefillah. If you feel like you're passing gas, don't say, well, let me pray and then I'll go to the bathroom. No, go to the bathroom first and then you pray tefillah cleanly. A person has to yawn. There's two ways of yawning, right? One way of yawning is, okay, that was pretty, yeah, I made you yawn. That was pretty, small, respectful. But then there's another way of yawning. Ready? Oh, if someone does this in the middle of tefillah, you should kick him out of the Bet Knesset. It's like disrespectful. It's disrespectful. It's disturbing. This is not the time to do it. So that's why the same with the burp. Sometimes you're praying. I'm telling you, it happens. Sometimes I drink seltzer, and then afterwards it's like I'm giving a shiur. Okay, and then you're trying to hold it in the whole time. Seltzer makes you burp. Okay, but there's different ways of burping. There's a way of burping and there's one like having your mouth open and putting the microphone on so that everyone can hear it. It's disrespectful. So of course things happen, but there's a way to do respectfully, and especially during the tefillah. And this hopefully teaches us. A person has to yawn like this. A person has to sneeze. Try to cover it. Try not to make a big loud sound. Although, as we learned from Rabbi Zera and Rabbi Hamnuna, sneezing during the tefillah is it's perfectly fine. It's even a good sign. But for all of these things, it's important to keep this in mind. Again, we've probably been doing this for a month now. Richard can tell you this. Richard, before you go to Amidah, go to the bathroom. You have to clear everything out. You have to brush. You have to floss. You have to Listerine. You have to brush your hair. You have to do all of the above. You're going into your tefillah prepared, focused, and Be'ezrat Hashem, Ribono Shel Olam should answer all of our tefillah tova. Okay? Azak Baruch. Be'ezrat Hashem will continue next week.